The story of Jacob is a profound narrative of God's faithfulness, sovereignty, and ability to use flawed individuals to fulfill his divine plan. To fully grasp Jacob's journey, we must delve deeply into his life, starting from his lineage and family history, following him through the pivotal events of his life, and exploring the spiritual lessons woven into his story. Jacob's life story is documented primarily in the book of Genesis, from chapters 25 through 49, and it is filled with rich detail that highlights both his humanity and God's incredible grace. Jacob was the grandson of Abraham, the man chosen by God to establish a covenant people. His father, Isaac, was the son of Abraham and Sarah, born miraculously in their old age as a fulfillment of God's promise, Genesis 21 verses 1-3. Jacob's mother, Rebekah, was chosen by God to be Isaac's wife after a divinely orchestrated meeting, Genesis 24. However, like her mother-in-law Sarah, Rebekah was barren for 20 years. Isaac prayed fervently for his wife, and the Lord answered his prayer. Genesis 25 verse 21 states, Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife, because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. During her pregnancy, Rebekah experienced a great struggle within her womb. Confused and troubled, she sought the Lord, and he revealed the extraordinary nature of the children she carried. In Genesis 25 verse 23, God said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." This prophecy set the stage for Jacob's life. It indicated a reversal of cultural norms, where the younger son would take precedence over the elder, a recurring theme in biblical narratives. When the twins were born, Esau came out first, red and hairy, and Jacob followed, grasping Esau's heel. This act of grasping the heel earned him the name Jacob, which means supplanter, or he who grasps the heel, Genesis 25 verse 26. Jacob and Esau grew up in the same household but were vastly different in temperament and interests. Genesis 25 verse 27 illustrates this, so the boys grew. And Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Their parents showed favoritism, with Isaac favoring Esau for his prowess and taste for wild game, and Rebekah favoring Jacob for his gentleness and spiritual inclination, Genesis 25 verse 28. This favoritism set the stage for conflict. One day, when Esau returned famished from hunting, Jacob seized the opportunity to bargain with him. Jacob offered Esau a bowl of lentil stew in exchange for his birthright, the privilege of the firstborn, which included a double portion of inheritance and leadership in the family. And Esau said, "Look, I am about to die, so what is this birthright to me?" Then Jacob said, "Swear to me as of this day." So he swore to him, and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, then he ate and drank, arose, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Genesis 25 verses 32-34, NKJV. Esau acted impulsively, prioritizing his immediate hunger over long-term blessings. His statement, "Look, I am about to die, what good is the birthright to me?" shows a short-sighted perspective. In moments of desperation or emotion, we may make choices that have lasting consequences. It's important to pause and think before acting. As Isaac grew old and blind, he prepared to bless Esau, intending to confer upon him the inheritance of the covenantal promises made to Abraham. However, Rebekah, remembering God's prophecy, conspired with Jacob to deceive Isaac and secure the blessing for him. In Genesis 27, Jacob disguised himself as Esau, wearing his brother's clothes and covering his smooth skin with goat hair to mimic Esau's roughness. And he went to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau your firstborn, I have done just as you told me, please arise, sit and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." Genesis 27 verses 18-19. Isaac, though suspicious, was ultimately convinced and blessed Jacob, saying, "May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed and those who bless you be blessed." Genesis 27 verse 29. Shortly after Jacob left Isaac's presence, Esau returned from his hunt and prepared the meal. When Esau entered and asked for his father's blessing, Isaac was shocked and trembled violently. "Who? Where is the one who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate all of it before you came, and I have blessed him, and indeed he shall be blessed." Genesis 27 verse 33. Esau cried out bitterly, "Bless me, me also, O my father." Genesis 27 verse 34. Isaac explained that the blessing had already been given to Jacob and could not be undone. Esau's anguish was palpable as he begged his father, "Have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me, me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Genesis 27 verse 38. Isaac did give Esau a blessing, but it was not one of prosperity or dominion. Instead, it highlighted a future of struggle. "Behold, your dwelling shall be of the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother, and it shall come to pass, when you become restless, that you shall break his yoke from your neck." Genesis 27 verses 39 to 40. Esau's disregard for his birthright earlier in life reflected a pattern of undervaluing spiritual blessings, which culminated in his loss. It teaches us to value and protect what God has given us. Esau expressed his deep resentment and plotted to kill Jacob after Isaac's death. This shows how personal and final Esau's sense of betrayal was. He believed that eliminating Jacob was the only way to reclaim his dignity and justice. Genesis 27 verse 41. Esau was furious and plotted to kill Jacob after Isaac's death. "The days of mourning for my father are at hand, then I will kill my brother Jacob." Rebekah, who had orchestrated the deception, learned of Esau's plan to kill Jacob. She acted quickly to protect Jacob. She instructed him to flee to her brother Laban in Haran until Esau's anger subsided. Genesis 27 verses 42 to 45. Rebekah presented this plan to Isaac as well, using a different reasoning. She said she could not bear for Jacob to marry a local Canaanite woman like Esau had, which would ruin their family's spiritual legacy. Genesis 27 verse 46. Isaac agreed to send Jacob to Haran, thus securing his departure. This marked the beginning of Jacob's journey away from home and the next chapter in his life. On his way to Haran, Jacob stopped for the night at a place later called Bethel. Here, he had a dream of a ladder reaching to heaven, with angels ascending and descending. Genesis 28 verses 13 to 15. "And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you." God reaffirmed the covenant promise made to Abraham and Isaac, assuring Jacob of his presence and protection. Jacob responded with awe, naming the place Bethel, House of God. Genesis 28 verses 20 to 21. "Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me, and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God." This event marks the beginning of Jacob's personal relationship with God, though his faith would mature over time. When Jacob arrived at Laban's household, it marked the beginning of a transformative chapter in his life. Genesis 29 to 31. Jacob arrived in Haran. He was both a fugitive and a man on a mission, as his father Isaac had instructed him to find a wife from his uncle Laban's family. When Jacob approached a well near Haran, he met some shepherds. After learning they were from Haran, he inquired about Laban, the son of Nahor. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. He said to them, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. Genesis 29 verses 4 to 5. The shepherds informed Jacob that Laban was alive and well, and at that very moment, Laban's daughter Rachel was approaching with her flock of sheep. When Jacob saw Rachel, it was love at first sight. Rachel was a shepherdess, bringing her father's sheep to the well. Jacob immediately stepped in to help, rolling the stone from the well's mouth to water her sheep. His actions were bold and chivalrous, showing his admiration for her. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and the son of Rebekah. So she ran and told her father. Genesis 29 verses 10 to 12. Jacob's emotional response revealed his relief and joy at finding family after his long, uncertain journey. His kiss was a greeting of kinship, but his tears suggested a mix of gratitude and perhaps the stirrings of deeper affection for Rachel. When Rachel informed her father Laban, he welcomed Jacob warmly. Laban embraced him, kissed him, and brought him into his home. Jacob stayed with Laban for a month, helping with the household and the flocks. After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, "Just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Genesis 29 verses 14 to 15. Jacob's love for Rachel grew quickly. The Bible describes Rachel as strikingly beautiful. Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Genesis 29 verse 17. Laban had two daughters, Leah, the elder, and Rachel, the younger. Leah is described as having weak eyes, which may mean she lacked the striking beauty of her sister. Jacob, captivated by Rachel, declared his intention to marry her. He offered to work for Laban for 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. Jacob's dedication and patience reflect the depth of his love for Rachel. This period also marked the beginning of Jacob's transformation, as he learned humility and endurance through hard labor. When the 7 years were complete, Jacob eagerly approached Laban, requesting to marry Rachel. However, on the wedding night, Laban deceived Jacob. Instead of Rachel, Laban gave him Leah. The morning after the wedding, Jacob discovered the deception. Jacob had previously deceived his father, Isaac, to receive the blessing meant for Esau. In this instance, Jacob experiences deception firsthand when Laban, Rachel's father, tricks him. Though Jacob felt betrayed, his situation was not outside of God's control. God often uses unexpected and challenging circumstances to shape our character and fulfill his purposes. Leah, though not Jacob's first choice, became the mother of Judah, through whom the lineage of Jesus Christ would come. This teaches us that even in moments of frustration or disappointment, God is working out a greater plan for good. Laban then made Jacob a new offer: "Complete the week with Leah, and we will give you Rachel also in return for serving me another 7 years." Genesis 29 verse 27. This meant that Jacob had to complete Leah's bridal week, a customary 7-day celebration for a new bride, after which he would be allowed to marry Rachel as well. However, the catch was that Jacob would need to commit to working an additional 7 years for Laban after marrying Rachel. Jacob agreed to Laban's terms because of his deep love for Rachel. After completing Leah's bridal week, Jacob was given Rachel as his wife. Genesis 29 verse 30, "So Jacob went in to Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years." The marriage arrangement created significant tension within the household. The rivalry between Leah and Rachel was intense, especially because Rachel was barren initially. God saw Leah's plight and blessed her with children. Reuben, Leah's firstborn, whose name means a son, as Leah hoped Jacob would love her, Genesis 29 verse 32. Simeon, Leah's second son, meaning God has heard, Genesis 29 verse 33. Levi, her third son, hoping Jacob would become attached to her, Genesis 29 verse 34. Judah, Leah praised God upon his birth, saying, "Now I will praise the Lord," Genesis 29 verse 35. Rachel, in her desperation, gave Jacob her maid Bilhah as a surrogate. Bilhah bore 2 sons, Dan. Rachel said, God has judged my case, Genesis 30 verse 6. And Naphtali. Rachel expressed triumph over Leah, Genesis 30 verse 8. Leah responded by giving Jacob her maid Zilpah, who also bore 2 sons, Gad. Leah rejoiced, saying, a troop comes, Genesis 30 verse 11. And Asher. Leah declared herself blessed, Genesis 30 verse 13. Leah later bore 2 more sons and a daughter, Issachar, born after Leah believed God rewarded her, Genesis 30 verse 18. Zebulun. Leah expressed hope for honor from Jacob, Genesis 30 verse 20. Dinah, the only recorded daughter of Jacob, Genesis 30 verse 21. Finally, God remembered Rachel and opened her womb. She gave birth to Joseph, saying, God has taken away my reproach. Genesis 30 verse 23. Despite Laban's attempts to cheat him, God blessed Jacob, making him wealthy and prosperous, Genesis 30 verse 43. After 20 years of serving Laban, 14 for his wives Leah and Rachel and 6 for his flocks, Jacob decided to return to his homeland. However, Laban, who had prospered greatly because of Jacob, convinced him to stay by offering wages. Laban's deceitful nature was revealed again, as he repeatedly changed Jacob's wages, Genesis 31 verse 7. God appeared to Jacob in a dream, instructing him to leave. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you. Jacob disclosed Laban's deceit to Rachel and Leah, who supported him. They secretly left with their possessions. Before leaving, Rachel stole her father's household gods, possibly as a claim to inheritance rights or as an act of defiance. When Laban discovered Jacob's departure, he pursued him. After catching up, Laban confronted Jacob, accusing him of deception and theft. Jacob defended himself, unaware that Rachel had stolen the household gods. Laban searched Jacob's camp but did not find them because Rachel hid them cleverly. The 2 men eventually made peace, establishing a covenant at Mizpah. May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. Genesis 31 verses 49 to 50. They set up a stone pillar as a witness to their agreement, and Laban returned home. Jacob prepares to meet Esau, Genesis 32 verses 3 to 21. On the way, Jacob feared encountering Esau, who had sworn to kill him. He sent messengers ahead to inform Esau of his return and to seek favor. The messengers returned with alarming news. Esau was coming to meet Jacob with 400 men. Terrified, Jacob divided his camp into 2 groups to minimize the risk of total loss if Esau attacked. He also prayed earnestly for God's protection. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. Genesis 32 verse 11. To appease Esau, Jacob prepared an extravagant gift of livestock, sending them ahead in waves to soften Esau's heart. The night before meeting Esau, Jacob was left alone. In this solitude, he wrestled with a mysterious man, later revealed to be God in human form. Jacob named the place Peniel, meaning, face of God, because he had seen God face to face and yet survived. The passage describes how Jacob struggled with the angel until daybreak, and when the angel could not overpower him, he touched Jacob's hip, dislocating it. Despite this, Jacob continued to hold on, asking for a blessing. The angel then revealed that his name would no longer be Jacob, meaning, deceiver, or supplanter, but Israel, meaning, he who struggles with God, or God prevails, because he had struggled with both God and humans and had overcome. The angel also blessed Jacob before departing. The next morning, Jacob saw Esau approaching with 400 men. Fearing the worst, Jacob bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached Esau. To his astonishment, Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, kissed him, and wept. Jacob's fears were unfounded. God had softened Esau's heart. Esau initially declined Jacob's gifts, but Jacob insisted, saying, "Please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me and I have all I need." Genesis 33 verse 11. After this peaceful reunion, the brothers parted ways amicably, with Esau returning to Seir and while Jacob traveled to Succos, where he built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock. After some time, Jacob moved to Shechem in the land of Canaan and purchased a piece of land from the sons of Hamor. There, he set up an altar and named it El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel, signifying his acknowledgement of God's provision and faithfulness. While in Shechem, a tragedy struck Jacob's family. Dinah, Jacob's daughter by Leah, went out to visit the women of the area, and she was violated by Shechem, the son of Hamor, the ruler of the land. However, Shechem fell in love with Dinah and wanted to marry her. He and his father approached Jacob to arrange the marriage. Jacob's sons were outraged and deceitfully agreed to the marriage on the condition that all the men in Shechem be circumcised. When the men complied, Simeon and Levi, two of Jacob's sons, attacked the city while the men were recovering, killing all the males and plundering their wealth, wives, and children. Jacob rebuked Simeon and Levi for their actions, fearing retaliation from the surrounding nations. "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." Genesis 34 verse 30. After the events at Shechem, God instructed Jacob to move to Bethel, where he had first appeared to him when Jacob fled from Esau. Then God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there, and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau." Jacob obeyed and told his household to get rid of their foreign gods and purify themselves. At Bethel, Jacob built an altar and worshipped God. There, God reaffirmed his covenant with Jacob. God appeared to him again and blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob, your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. Genesis 35 verses 9 to 10. God promised Jacob that nations and kings would come from him, and the land he had promised to Abraham and Isaac would be given to Jacob and his descendants. As Jacob traveled from Bethel, Rachel went into labor near Ephrath, later called Bethlehem. Her labor was difficult, and as she was dying, she named her son Benoni, meaning, son of my sorrow, but Jacob renamed him Benjamin, son of my right hand. Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, and Jacob set up a pillar over her tomb. Rachel's death was a devastating loss for Jacob, as she was the wife he deeply loved. Jacob eventually returned to his father, Isaac, in Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, Hebron. Isaac lived to be 180 years old and died peacefully. Jacob and Esau came together again to bury their father. Jacob had 12 sons, who would later become the heads of the tribes of Israel. However, his favoritism toward Joseph, the firstborn of Rachel, caused strife within the family. Jacob gave Joseph a richly ornamented robe, symbolizing his favor, which fueled jealousy among his brothers. Joseph had dreams indicating that he would one day rule over his family, further angering his brothers. In one dream, he saw sheaves of grain bowing to his sheaf, and in another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed to him. When Joseph shared these dreams, his brothers hated him even more. His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Genesis 37 verse 8. Joseph's brothers plotted against him and eventually sold him into slavery in Egypt, deceiving Jacob into believing Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. They presented Jacob with Joseph's robe, dipped in goat's blood. Jacob was devastated. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave." So his father wept for him. Jealousy drove Joseph's brothers to despise him and ultimately plot his demise. This highlights how unchecked envy can lead to irrational actions that harm others and fracture relationships. The brothers' jealousy stemmed from Joseph being their father Jacob's favorite and his prophetic dreams of leadership over them. Envy blinds us to the good in others and in ourselves. It's essential to guard our hearts against comparison and bitterness. Despite the brothers' evil intentions, God used their actions to fulfill his divine plan for Joseph and Israel. Joseph himself later acknowledged this when he said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50 verse 20. After years of believing Joseph was dead, Jacob received the astonishing news from his sons: Joseph was not only alive but also the ruler of Egypt. This revelation came after Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers during their visit to Egypt for food during the famine, so they went up out of Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned, he did not believe them. Genesis 45 verses 25 to 26. Initially, Jacob was overwhelmed and struggled to accept the truth. The years of mourning and heartbreak had taken their toll. But when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to transport him and his family to Egypt, his spirit revived, and he declared, "I'm convinced. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Genesis 45 verse 28. When Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers, saying, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" the brothers were terrified and unable to respond. Their shock stemmed from guilt over their past betrayal and the sudden realization that the brother they had sold into slavery was now Egypt's second-in-command. After his reassurance, Joseph embraced his brothers, weeping with them and demonstrating his forgiveness. This moment was emotionally transformative, replacing guilt and fear with relief and reconciliation. Jacob was stunned when he heard the news because he had mourned Joseph as dead for many years and could not process such unexpected news. Before leaving Canaan, Jacob stopped at Beersheba to worship God and seek his guidance. God appeared to Jacob in a vision, reassuring him, "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." Genesis 46 verses 3 to 4. This promise reminded Jacob of God's covenant with his ancestors and gave him the confidence to move forward. Jacob, his sons, their families, and all their possessions made the journey to Egypt, totaling 70 people in all. When Jacob arrived in Egypt, Joseph prepared to meet him. He rode his chariot to Goshen, where Jacob was waiting. The reunion was deeply emotional. As Jacob neared the end of his life, he called Joseph and his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to bless them. Jacob gave the younger son, Ephraim, the greater blessing, crossing his hands as he prayed, but his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." Genesis 48 verse 19. Jacob's choice mirrors earlier events in his own life when he, the younger son, was chosen over Esau for the covenant blessing. Similarly, Ephraim's elevation over Manasseh demonstrates God's grace and his ability to choose anyone for his purposes, not based on merit but his sovereign will. Jacob's blessings on his 12 sons were prophetic, revealing the destinies of the tribes of Israel. Some blessings highlighted strengths, while others addressed shortcomings. For example, Jacob blessed Judah with a promise of leadership and kingship. "The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his." Genesis 49 verse 10. This prophecy foreshadowed the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, from the line of Judah. Before his death, Jacob instructed his sons to bury him in the cave of Machpelah in Canaan, where Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah were buried. Jacob passed away peacefully at the age of 147, surrounded by his family. When Jacob had finished giving instructions to his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph wept and mourned for his father. Following Egyptian customs, Jacob was embalmed, and Joseph secured Pharaoh's permission to carry out Jacob's burial wishes. A grand funeral procession traveled to Canaan, where Jacob was buried. Jacob's life is a profound journey of transformation, perseverance, and God's unwavering faithfulness. Through his story, we learn key lessons about human nature, divine grace, and the importance of living with purpose and faith. Jacob often faced uncertainty, from fleeing Esau to navigating famine and moving to Egypt. Yet, God guided him at every step, reaffirming his promises. Even when we don't see the full picture, we can trust God's faithfulness to lead and provide. From the birthright to the blessings and Joseph's rise to power, God's hand orchestrated every event in Jacob's story to fulfill his covenant promise. God's plans may not align with human expectations, but they are always for a greater purpose. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video inspiring, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need it. We'd love to hear your thoughts or takeaways in the comments below. Your voice matters to us. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next upload. We can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, stay blessed, stay hopeful, and keep trusting in the journey God has for you. See you soon.